chainers, wherever you are in the world. This is Sarah Barnes-Humphrey with you today. Are you ready? Let's talk supply chain.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Thoughts and Coffee. My name is Sarah Barnes-Humphrey. I'm the CEO and host and founder of Let's Talk Supply Chain, the Blended Podcast, and the founder of the Blended Pledge. And I'm coming to you from sunny Long Beach, California, because I am here for TPM this week. And I believe some stuff went out yesterday on social media live at TPM. It's their 25th anniversary, and I'm here to celebrate with them because such a great conference. And so if you're here, I want to come and say hi to me today. I'm just going to be recording some more stuff for live at TPM. And if you're not, stay tuned on their social media to find out a little bit more. All right. Well, before we get into everything, I want to mention our show sponsor, which is the Secret Society of Supply Chain. Head over to secretsocietyofsupplychain.com. We've got all sorts of membership groups for you, women in supply chain groups, groups for marketing professionals in supply chain, and our Secret Society of Supply Chain membership as well. We've got a great show for you today. Mark from Softeon is back in the studio to talk all about warehousing and inventory management. We're going to be talking about robots versus drones and so much more. But before I bring them up, let's talk about our brand new episode. So as you all know, on Saturday is International Women's Day. And in honor of that, Christine Barnhart and I, and she hosts Supply Chain Unfiltered, got together to talk about women in supply chain, women empowering other women, women supporting other women, and what that looks like. It's a great episode. We had some fun talking about some of the stuff we've been through. We've seen what we'd like to see for the industry. So it's episode 452, wherever you listen to the show. I see you, Frank. I see you, Rob. If you are tuning in, I want to make sure that you are putting in the comments where you are tuning in from, because we'd love to give you a shout out. Next, I just wanted to let you all know. So Saturday, I'm actually going to be at a conference in Mississauga, which is just outside of Toronto. I am one of the finalists for the 2025 Women Rise Awards amongst these amazing women, Callum and Mega. And I just want to say thank you so much to Empowering Women in Business for listing me as a finalist for Saturday, and I can't wait to see everybody. All right, next, I just wanted to share. So Mark, who is coming on and being the guest for Thoughts and Coffee today, he was a guest for our LinkedIn Live, I think it was last week or the week before, From Chaos to Coordination, and we talked all about using warehouse automation to achieve long-term success. If you didn't check it out, we're going to put the link in the comments for you to go and watch it, because the topics that we talk about today, we dive into a little bit deeper on that particular episode. So we want to make sure that we cover all of those discussions during our live today. And I think last but not least, I have a new monthly pop out. So last month we rebranded the monthly hustle to the monthly pop, which is progress over perfection. And I put out an article this month about my secret battle, why I nearly quit advocacy. Everybody knows I've been in advocacy for quite a while with our Women in Supply Chain, now with Blended, around inclusion, diverse voices, et cetera, et cetera. So go and read that. I get a little bit vulnerable in this one, but I wanted to share some of the struggles and challenges that I faced in the last year. Plus, where are we going to be? Well, right now we're at TPM 25, March 2nd through 5th in Long Beach, California. Then I'm going to be at Break Bulk April 24th through 25th in New Orleans, and Home Delivery World May 21st and 22nd. Go and check out all of those events, and hopefully I will see you there. All right. I think that it is time to bring up Mark. I've definitely talked for way too much. All right, Mark, good morning. How are you?
I'm great. How are you? And just as a note, there's a big storm system not affecting you, but affecting the rest of the country, going smack dab through the country. And right now, I can see outside. It's about 50-mile-an-hour winds and horrible storm. So if you lose me, that's why. So just let you know.
If I lose you, we don't have a show. Nobody wants to.
Well, I'm just, I'm knock on wood. So.
Where are you located for that storm?
I'm just about an hour north of Houston.
Oh, okay. So it's happening over Texas way. All right.
Yeah,
Well, it's good
exactly.
for anybody who's at TPM who may need to go home today or tomorrow to know that. Well, we're crossing our fingers and hopefully that we can get through this. I mean, it is the fastest 30 minutes in supply chain. So hopefully that storm won't even know what hit it. All right. So for anybody who didn't watch the LinkedIn Live, don't know who you are, tell everybody who you are and what you do.
Sure, I'm the CTO of Softeon. I've been in the space for since call it 1988. You can tell by my luxurious gray hair. I've been around. I've been in the business doing implementations, running development teams, and back here with Softeon after being on my own for about the last 25 years doing implementations in about 16, 17 different countries.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I'm excited to have you back here. That LinkedIn Live that we did, so popular. We had such great feedback on it. And you really gave so many amazing insights. I think I had a bunch of people reach out to me and say that they walked away with actionable insights and things that they could actually take back to their teams and work on and put into place and all of that. So just want to give you kudos to that because that was really popular and everybody loved it. All right. So let's get to our poll of the week. So we ask everybody a question every single Wednesday morning. And last week we asked, what's the most important warehouse management system or WMS feature? Now we had over 126 votes for this one. 40% said data visibility. 31% said speed and efficiency. 16% said user-friendly design, which we're going to talk about in a minute. And 13% said customization. Mark, does this surprise you? Like, is this something, do these numbers surprise you at all? Where did you think this was going to land?
No, I think that it's right on with what we're seeing, what I'm seeing, and what I've been seeing, let's say for the last 10 years. On the data visibility, if you think about what's happened with our industry, which is really super exciting. I'm starting with the great engineering schools who have turned out some great programs around supply chains. The professional the shift to much more professional staff running things means that they just need access to what's going on right now. Data, visibility of the data, displays, KPIs. That does not surprise me at all because the shift, like I said, over the last 10 or 15 years to a much more professional level of folks, running these supply chains from when I started, which was a guy, a cigar, looking above the supply chain, looking above the warehouse. And, it's dramatically changed. The speed and efficiency, obviously, right? That's about scalability. We talk a lot about scalability, and the rest of this is pretty obvious.
Yeah, the office that was above the warehouse with the window. Like when you said that's immediately where my mind went.
Exactly. That was like some guy saying, you know how many guys I got sitting around not doing anything right now because the system is down, chewing on a cigar. That was pretty much what it was like when I started.
Back in the day. Well, I want to give a shout out to Scott. He says consideration for all users, not just leaders and managers. So I say user friendly. Now, this is something that we're going to be talking a little bit later on in the conversation. Chris says depends on the domain, accuracy and traceability. Geraldo says the most important feature of a WMS can vary depending on the specific needs. What do you think about all three of those comments?
Yeah, we'll talk a lot about the UI side of things in a little bit because it's not just the UI. It's about what does it take for a person to get up to speed and effective, not just using the software or operating, in the facility, but effective in the facility. And, the point about like it depends is so true because, there's highly automated facilities where, things are, vast majority of things are on autopilot, but you have what we call a HMI, human machine interface, that basically can show you a diagram of like the pieces that are working, any trouble spots and things like that. So the variability of the warehouses out there is what's so really exciting about our industry and makes it so awesome to work in it.
It's so true. Now I want to remind everybody who's listening and watching, make sure to put any comments in the comments on LinkedIn so we can get to those and answer any of your questions as well. Plus, if you're liking the conversation, use a fire emoji. We want to hear from you, and let us know where you're tuning in from as well. All right, now before we get to our first article, I usually ask our guests to give a little bit of a market update. So, what are you seeing in the industry? What are your clients talking to you about? What are some of the biggest questions they have? What's top of mind for them?
Yeah, it continues to revolve around labor, and that has been, I think we talked about this last time. The issue that we have here with warehouses is they tend to be co-located, right? And people would go across the street for either an easier, friendlier job or 5 cents an hour or something like that. And I think that continues to be that's like a battlefront, right? That's just a battlefront for how the operations need to work. I think that there's some concern over the changes with the new administration, but in the warehouse field myself, I don't feel that as much as I think folks on the transportation are looking at that and wondering. But those are the two big things that I'm hearing.
Yeah, I think for me being here at TPM, the number one thing everybody's thinking about and talking about is tariffs, which we are not going to get into today. That's a much bigger topic than what we can talk.
I like the fact that I can work in the four walls mostly, or the four walls plus the yard, and then that's my universe of things that I can think about.
So that's definitely top of mind for everybody today, and I think it's today that it happens. So everybody's sort of waiting to see what happens. But you and I talked about labor during that LinkedIn Live. And so the link is in the comments. We talk more about labor and what you can do about that in that live. So go check that out. All right, I think that's great. So let's get into our first article. Now, I picked this article because I thought it was interesting. I was just at Manifest a few weeks ago, and of course, there was a lot of different options for warehouse management or inventory management. Some people were displaying robots. Some people were displaying drones. And so I think it's sort of a battle between which one is right for inventory management. Maybe it's a combination of the two. I'm not entirely sure. But I wanted to bring this article to our conversation today because I thought it was right up your alley, Mark. Basically, this article talks about how drones are good for inventory management. AMR equals robots, but robots are also good for inventory management, and they have a variety of pros and cons to each. My question was sort of around, can they work hand in hand? Can you use both, or do you sort of use one over the other? And are we in this versus mode? So Mark, talk to me about this. I have a few comments from the article, but I want to get your take on this first.
Yeah, for me, this isn't a us or them situation with these techs. These techs have, in my view, right this very second, as we speak today, they're good at different use cases. So, we've been using drones for, I don't know, the past 7-8 years, I would say, for inventory. So inventory operations, so IOPS, or inventory operations, which means counting, cycle counting, looking for empty locations, that sort of validating locations. In that situation, drones are really good at that. Now, I would say that you have to coordinate that really well, because when you have drones in an aisle, most of the time you can't have a human associated in the same aisle, just because of safety things. So there's a little bit of an issue there sometimes with regard to when you can use the drones. In most of the robots these days are really good at collision avoidance, and robots and humans can occupy the same space very well in most cases. There's some exceptions about fast lanes and things like that. But to me, they're vastly different use cases. I still love the drones from an inventory operations perspective. It's fabulous. Now, from like the rest of the facility, picking, replenishments, etc. That's where the AMRs come in, and they absolutely dominate the space.
I have a question on that, because in my mind, with the drones, to have a human operator behind it to operate, and I could be completely wrong. Whereas the robots are more automated, and in this article it says that once they decide that they need to be recharged, they can go back to their charging station without human interaction or interference. Is that the case where it needs a little bit more human interaction or no?
I would say right now, as the market stands, mostly. There's a new set of drones coming out that are much more autonomous. The first generation was into the racks and whatever, and then the next generation was building in a collision avoidance system where it kept you within it basically you just went up and down. You still operated, but it kept a safe distance from the racks. This next generation that we started to see a couple of years ago are much more autonomous. Like they could go out and you can say, go into this aisle, look at all the locations, and it'll do that. And so I think it's a progression, right? And we're just starting to see those drones get a little bit better about being autonomous. The vast majority of things that I'm just one data point. The vast majority of things that I've implemented, it's a more like an assisted thing where you basically are telling it to do this aisle and you're going up and down. It's maintaining distances and doing that sort of stuff autonomously, but you're guiding it up and down the racks and just making sure it gets. So I think it's a maturity thing. It's getting there. This next year or two, I think you'll see a lot of more movement toward autonomous, devices out there on that front.
Yeah. Well, so a couple of things that stood out from this article for me was robots can run longer than drones. So robots have they have 10-hour battery life, whereas drones are about 2 to 25 minutes. Is that right?
Yeah, that is a real life thing. It's a bit like the hip printers, right? Where you got a hip printer, it's awesome, but the media supply is really small because it's a hip printer, right? These things have to fly, so you can't put a 2-pound battery in there, or something like that. So you can't put a massive battery in, and the flight times are still an issue. I think for doing inventory operations where you're basically saying, okay, I'm going to count this aisle and then I'm going to change the battery and then do the next aisle. It's not super intrusive, but once you get into more of wanting an autonomous situation, then you have to have those in the air, for longer durations.
Right. And then it said robots or AMRs are easily adaptable to the environment. Drones hate contained or confined spaces. That was one of the things that this article said. They said one of the risks around drones are potential for crashes as well.
Yeah, right. As I said, though, I think the drone guys have done a pretty good job over the last couple of years working on collision avoidance. The first ones that were out there, they were crashing right and left, and it was a bit of a mess, literally a mess. I don't buy that part about that. I mean, there's some. Look, robots need a flat floor, so most of them anyway, they struggle a bit with uneven surfaces. And the reality is, I've done big paper mills and stuff like that where, those drones are awesome because, they can get an overhead view of a massive amount of these big rolls, these 3,000-pound rolls, and you can't get in there. They're occluded. All those rolls are occluded. So I would say that, again, it just goes back to, one of the comments you originally started with, the fellow or the person that said, hey, it just depends on, your operational requirements. That's the deal, right? What kind of facility are you in, and what kind of material are you trying to understand, right? Because sometimes a drone with an overhead shot can give you a better view of things.
Absolutely. All right, let's get into our second article, which is from Softeon. And this is what we were alluding to at the top of the show. And it's not something that we talk a lot about, but you're so right in the fact that UI, UX design is going to really pave the way for adoption for any sort of new technology. It needs to be easy to use. There needs to be potential for less training involved. So talk to me about this article. Why did you write it? Why do you think that it's so important for people and supply chain leaders, supply chain teams when they're looking to adopt new technology?
Right. I think that it goes somewhat back to the conversation that we had about labor and making the ergonomics in such a way that people can be performing well without putting in all the effort. I mean, even so, like when we look at the UI, we look at the usability part of it. Like, hey, it's got to be easy to use, very plain, you should have a small amount of things on the screen and plainly readable and maybe images of the things you're picking, etc. But more importantly, from my perspective, is training is not just about training on a relatively simple app. It's about navigating. Someone new and you got a 100,000 square foot facility where they're navigating around, putting hints like you're changing an aisle now, right? Or you're moving 3 bays, right? Those kinds of things. Instead of just having to code a location to say, okay, what does this mean? Oh, and that takes, I don't know, somebody who's really good at it, a couple seconds to encode that. If we change the way we present the information on the screen, we can attend to the fact that people want to be productive. Everybody wants to be a winner. People want to be productive faster, right? And sometimes that goes to pay for performance, etc. But always it goes to people feeling successful in what they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, the new generation that's coming into the industry, technology needs to be intuitive. They need to be able to play around with it and be able to navigate to where they want to go without asking too many questions or having to go to too many people to find out how to do it. Because that's just frustrated them. And they're not going to want to use that technology.
Yeah, exactly.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
I was going to say, and the other part of that is just make sure that you're right. People are now used to using apps. It's got to feel like an easy to use app, but it's got to be tuned to the way the operation needs that person to behave. So, like I said, making sure that we're helping them navigate, making sure that they understand clearly that they should be moving now. There's things like that will help them, be productive faster, but also just kind of understand what the expectation is for the work.
Yeah. And I think people want to have fun with it.
Exactly.
Right? If it's intuitive and they can really dance around and figure out where they're going on their own, it makes them feel accomplished and like they understand the technology and they have fun, trying things out and seeing what fits and what works and what doesn't and where they want to go and where they don't want to go.
Yeah, exactly. And we always say, it's human nature. People want to be successful. They want to be part of a successful team. And by giving them tools like this, you get them into the mode of being part of that success faster.
Yeah. Well, I have a question here about our last article, and I want to get to it before we go to our third article. So Nicholas says, is there any concern about investing in AMR hardware that is oftentimes tied to 3 to 5 year ROI when the pace of advancing technology and battery efficiency could obsolete the AMR before the ROI matures? Can you answer that for us? I think it's a great question.
I think it is a great question. I would say that I typically see ROI if, in a lot of the cases, the ROI is shorter than that. It's closer to the 3 than the 5 year, but still, it's a really good question. Here's the thing that I would encourage people to do. I would encourage people to consider commercial options with the vendors around robots as a service. So if you think about robots as a service, you are paying some capital costs from the perspective of putting in charging stations, right? But the robots themselves, right? They are basically, robot employees almost on a monthly basis. And so you can switch them out. You can, as new things come along, you might be able to switch the new ones in. I would consider, if you have a serious concern with that, and it is really a good question because it's the same question people who have aging EV cars are having is, what do I do with this thing? When the battery goes, it's most of the value, right? So it's a similar concern is what happens, when this, is now fully depreciated, but there's newer tech. Again, I love that model of robots as a service. Really, really gives you flexibility.
Yeah, you got to work with a partner that's continuously innovating and that you can work with, like you said, to switch out with that advancing technology. Yeah. All right, such a great question. Thank you, Nicholas. Now we're going to get to our last article. Now this is from a couple of years ago. You'll notice that this is from 2018, but I thought it was such a good article around what you want to know that makes a good warehouse manager. I get asked all the time about upskilling, and I think we talk about upskilling around technology, which is which is needed in a lot of roles today. But I think also we need to talk about upskilling to management, right? What does a good warehouse manager look like? What are the questions that they're asking? What are they talking to their teams about? What are the skills that they need? So I thought this was quite fitting since we're talking about WMS, we're talking about inventory optimization, and it's just a really fun article. So I want to bring you into the conversation, Mark. You probably work with a lot of warehouse managers. What did you think about this article? How does it tie into now the technology being brought into warehouses?
Yeah, I think it's a great article. Actually, I did read it. Actually, I think read it when it first came out, and then I read it again, over the last couple of days as you sent this to me. I think it's good. I think the one thing that I would say that, from my perspective, that I see is the ability to think creatively, right? So, it's easy to say, hey, I can drive KPIs, I can communicate with what is required, which, and that be a good communicator is obviously maybe the biggest thing about that, understanding the KPIs that you're asking our folks to deliver on and doing that. But I think people thinking creatively about how to solve problems, even like little things. I was out at a site once, and the warehouse manager gave different areas to different groups to sort of maintain from a housekeeping and just orderly perspective. And you would see these handmade signs. Don't even think about leaving something here. Sign, sign the West Wing, admin group, or whoever was in charge of this. And I had another book that says, do not even think about leaving a box hanging over, on the edge. Or don't think about leaving trash in my area. Sign this team. Giving that sort of creative, license to different groups to be responsible for their different areas and to have fun with it a little bit I love seeing that kind of stuff in the site, because it tells me there's attention to detail and there's somebody specifically worrying about that detail in that area, and delegating that kind of responsibility to your leaders is one of the biggest things that I think we've historically been missing. And that kind of creative approach to, hey, take care of your areas and do it in a fun way, and it makes people really feel responsible, but also like it feels a little dangerous walking in that area. Like if you're like, I'm definitely not going to leave a box hanging out. So.
They need signs that say we're watching you, right?
Yeah,
now
exactly.
They're all over the warehouse, and they get to do some arts and crafts as a team, right? Because they got to create those things.
Yeah, in fact, I did some for a craft company, and there was they actually had a contest to bedazzle their signs. It was fabulous. That's the kind of stuff I love. That creative approach to enabling them to be responsible for their areas and showing people that they care is really a big part of being a good any kind of good leader.
Yeah, the ownership piece. I love that. So some of the things that stood out to me were know the product as well as the owner. They were saying that the warehouse manager in this particular case gets involved in buying and forecasting, which is not typical. But if they understand the product, they can actually support and assist internally. And that's where that internal collaboration comes from. Be nuts for process, quick to adapt during peak season, look outside the box to build your team. That was another one. Obsessed with productivity and, like you said, Mark, communication. So that really brings us to the end of the show. I just want to say thank you to everybody who was in the audience. I want to thank you to the weather gods so that Mark could stay with us for the whole show. I know we got some really great insights and had some really great questions. So thank you all for joining us. Mark, thank you for joining me today, and I'll see everybody next week. Bye, everyone.